All right, we got 1-1. We're understanding points, lines, and planes. These are kind of our essential building blocks of geometry. Make sure you guys have a piece of paper out to like write stuff down, draw. You don't have to write down all these notes. This slideshow is available to you guys on the Google Classroom page, so you don't have to copy this all out verbatim, but in fact, I would recommend that you don't. Just make sure you're kind of following along, doing the questions as we talk about them. All right. So for this lesson, we're just going to be basically picking up new material. We're going to know some of it. We're not going to know some of it. So I am going to relate information to you guys. I'm going to say it. It's going to show up on the slide. And I want you to try to pick it up. What I want you to do on occasion is restate some of the things that we have been talking about. So you might think about some of the definitions that were presented and restate them in your own words, or answer a question or something like that. You'll either do that in chat, or if someone wants to share out on the Zoom call, they can do that. And then the third thing is to create. I think that's one of the most important ways to know that you understand something, is that you've actually created something. I won't necessarily check that from you, but I do want you to make sure you have a piece of paper to kind of draw out some things that we're talking about. Okay. I'm not going to have you submit it today, but in the future, maybe I will have you submit something to be a participation grade for the class. All right, so why? The important point is to alleviate boredom. If I'm just sitting here talking at you the whole time, it's pretty boring for everyone involved. Okay, so here we go. First thing is the undefined terms. What are they? So undefined terms are going to be the building blocks of all of our definitions. These particular terms can't be described using other figures. So we get into this problem where it's really hard to define something in geometry without using other words that don't really have definitions, unless we use the other words we're trying to define them. And it becomes a problem, a really circular problem, where if I use the word point to define a line, but I haven't defined the word point, it gets really tricky. So we just say we have these three objects called the point, line, and plane that are going to be our undefined terms. We kind of have a common notion, a common description that we can accept, and we can actually physically draw them out and see what they look like and kind of understand some of their properties intuitively without actually having a real formal mathematical definition. Okay. So the first one is the point. The kind of idea behind a point is it names a location. It has no size. So even though we may use a dot to represent it, technically that dot has some size to it, but a point is infinitely small. When we're naming points, we use capital letters like P. So in our picture there, we have point P marked with a capital letter P. Pretty simple. Second one is a line. The common notion, the common way we're going to talk about a line is a straight path that has no thickness and extends forever. So you can see here a line, when we draw it, even with like a pencil that's pretty narrow, that has some amount of thickness. Technically, a line is infinitely thin and is made up of points, but we actually just draw a continuous line to represent them rather than just a bunch of dots to represent all the infinite number of points that are there. For a line, for naming purposes, we can do it two main ways. We either use a script lowercase letter like this, like a little L, and we call it line L, or we use 2 points that are on the line. So 2 points that are on this line are X and Y, and we use a little line symbol up above the 2 letters. So we can call this line XY or line YX. The order of those 2 letters doesn't matter, because a line doesn't really have a direction. It goes both ways. So it doesn't matter which letter comes first. A lot of times you'll see people do it alphabetically just because, but it doesn't really matter. And the last one is the plane. So a plane is a flat surface that has no thickness and extends forever. I like to think of a plane as sort of like a piece of paper, although technically a piece of paper has edges and stops, whereas a plane would continue in all directions on that flat surface forever, infinitely. And just like a a line, a plane is infinitely thin. There's no thickness to a plane. Though drawing it, you know, we might have some. So a plane in drawing is usually kind of represented by kind of a four-sided shape drawn slanted just to give it some three-dimensional perspective. And then on top of that, you can draw lines or points, or you could draw lines that intersect the plane and go through it. They like hit it at a point and then pass through it. When we name a plane, we can do it in two ways. So similar to a line, we can use a cursive kind of script letter, but it's a capital letter in this case, whereas for a line, it's lowercase. So we could call this plane R using that script letter there, or we can use 3 points that are on the plane. So these 3 points, A, B, C, are all on the plane. So we could call it plane ABC. The reason we use 3 points is because technically 3 points establish a plane, meaning that whenever we have 3 points, there's exactly a single plane that touches all of those 3 points at the same time. It's actually one of the reasons why a lot of times stools or tripods, they all have 3 legs to them oftentimes, right? Because those 3 ends of the legs of the stool or the tripod are always guaranteed to touch at the same time. If you add a 4th one, you can kind of get a wobbly stool or a wobbly surface because those 4 points won't necessarily always be in the same plane. So that would cause it to sort of tilt. 3 of them would be touching at the same time, but that 4th one might not. So 3 points define a plane. That's actually one of our postulates, which we'll get to much later. All right, so these are undefined terms. We just sort of agree on what they are. We kind of have a pretty intuitive understanding of them. We can think of lots of examples of planes or parts of planes and lines and points and things. All right, so we have these 2 words that are really important. And this will be kind of the end of me talking for just a few minutes here. The first word is called collinear. Collinear means points that lie on the same line. That's it. The prefix co, we're going to talk about in just a second, but the second word here is coplanar. Coplanar are points or lines that lie on the same plane. So you could have 2 lines that are coplanar. They're just on the same flat surface. Or you could have a line and a point that are coplanar. That point and that line are both on the same plane. Or you can just have a bunch of points that are coplanar. They're on the same plane. So what does the word co mean? How does this word, that prefix co, how does that kind of create what these words mean? The way I like to think about it is the word, or the prefix co, kind of means together. So the word collinear sort of means together on a line. These points are together on a line. They're all on the same line. And the word coplanar means together on a plane. These things are together on the same plane. Right, both, yeah. Co sort of means both also, yeah. To both or together, same idea. They're both in the same plane. They're both on the same line. These are important words for us to understand what they mean when we say them. All right, so I'm gonna have you guys restate some stuff. You can either type them in the chat, you can state them to yourself. I'd like some people to share something in the chat as we're going here. In your words, try to think about how you would tell someone what an undefined term is. Take a minute, think about it, type it out in the chat. I'm going to read and react to them as people do that.
Did you say type it in chat?
Yeah, go ahead and yeah, type what you're thinking in the chat. So I'm kind of reading here. Terms that can't be defined by other figures. Okay. An undefined term is a term that we accept as true. Something that isn't defined, yeah. A term with no solid definition. something we don't know, a term that cannot be defined. Word that you can't define using that word, the building terms that can't be defined, a point, line, and a plane. Yeah, those are examples of what we're using as our undefined term. Yeah, so in mathematics, when we say the word define, definition, we mean something a little bit different than what you might say in your English class. A definition in mathematics has to have really very strict rules. Every part of that definition has to have a mathematical property or something associated with it. It's really hard for us to define things, define everything mathematically. So we have to start with some really simple things that we just accept to be true because they make sense to us, they're intuitive, or we have a good idea of what they are without needing a formal definition, and we can just sort of agree on what properties they have, what they look like, things like that. And those are kind of our undefined terms. And then from there, once we accept those few things, we can start to build more complicated stuff. Now that we know what a line is and a point and a plane, we could sort of talk about, all right, now using those words, how do we define what a triangle is? Or how do we define what an angle is, or something like that? So once we have these building blocks, we can start to create more complicated definitions. I'm just kind of restating what I was saying and taking some of the things that you guys had. All right. What are points, lines, and planes? You don't have to type this out. Just think about them. What is a point? What is a line? What is a plane? What's kind of our working definition? So a point is a location. We represent it with a dot. We use capital letters to name them. A line is a straight path, keeps going forever in both directions. A plane is a flat surface. All right. What does the prefix co mean with the terms collinear and coplanar? Remember, how does that prefix co impact these words? And you don't have to type in the chat. If you'd like to, you can. You just think about them. It means both are together. Yep. Yeah, and with the chats, feel free to send them directly to me if you feel that you'd rather do that rather than posting it out there to everyone. It's fine with me. I'd like it if you went ahead and did it to everybody, but if you want to just do it to me, I'm okay with that. So together on a line, together on a plane. That's what we're talking about with these two terms. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on. Here's a picture, but the picture didn't load up. Uh-oh. That's silly. Let's do it this way. Let's find an image of this. We'll do this one, keep it simple. That's not a great picture. It'll work for now. So here we go. We've got a picture of some objects. Got a couple lines there. We've got some points. We've got a plane. You can sort of see whenever you have to incorporate planes into your drawings, how you kind of force yourself to start drawing in 3 dimensions and having depth to your picture. You can't just draw it flat. Your piece of paper is a plane, and when you're trying to draw a 3-dimensional object on there, it gets a little complicated. I'm not asking us to become sort of artists here and draw things beautifully in perspective or anything like that. We're going to try it a little bit just to get an idea of what it's like, but not too much of you having to draw a lot. But we have this plane. Again, it has edges because we have to show the edges to kind of show the plane itself. But usually, you know, the plane would keep going forever. So it doesn't technically stop at this edge. This plane we could name a couple ways. We could use the cursive script letter they're giving us up here. We could call this plane P. We could choose 3 of the points on there. We could call it plane So I'm going to write some things on here. So we could call it plane P with that cursive P that they've got. We could call it plane, any 3 points. Now, technically, when we're naming a plane, our points can't all be on a same line, because if they're all on a same line, they don't actually define the plane. You could sort of think about if you had a three-legged stool and all of the legs were lined up, it would tilt, right? It wouldn't necessarily sit flat on the surface. If you try to stand it up, it might fall over. So similarly, if we try to define a plane, we need to choose 3 points. So I'm going to just call it AEG. Those 3 points are not all in the same line, so they kind of form a triangle and they sit there, and yeah. So those are 2 ways we could name the plane. And then we have a couple lines here. This line here, we could call it line L. It looks like it's on the plane. If it looks like it's on there, we just sort of have to assume that it does. But this other line, it actually looks like it passes through, and you can sort of tell this. People will do this a lot with their drawings. You'll see the dotted lines. That sort of means you're looking through something. So we're looking through the plane to be able to see the other part of this line. Anyway, this is an example of a drawing of some points, lines, and planes. Yeah. So let's name this line. This could be line L. It could be AC. Those are 2 points on the line. We could call it GC. We could call it AG, right? Any 2 points that are on the line, we can do it that way. Just pick the 2 points, put the line symbol on the top. Again, it's just a little line on top of the letters, and that refers to that particular line right there. And then we have point E. Point E is coplanar with this line. It looks like it's on this plane. Again, if it looks like it, we kind of just have to assume that it is. If there was a point like out here, and we called this, I don't know, point Z, we could assume it looks like this point's not on the plane, right? We could assume that this point was actually just not on this plane. It was on a different one somewhere. Okay, do me a favor on the participants window. Would you just let me know real quick, do you feel like you're getting it, yes or no? So open the participants. If you feel like you're understanding what we're doing right now, click yes. If you feel like you're having trouble on it, click no. Thumbs up works too. I can read any of those. Okay. Looks like most people, few people haven't responded yet, but yeah. All right. Okay. So that's good. It's going to take some time to feel really comfortable with the different symbols that we'll be using, but hopefully it'll make more sense as we keep moving on. All right, I am going to close this one. And go back to the presentation. I meant to have a picture there. Looks like I must have deleted it on accident or something. Okay, so create. What I would like you guys to do is to draw something on your paper. Again, I'm not asking you to be like a professional artist here, but try to make it neat a little bit, that has at least 1 point, a line, and a plane. Make sure to label your stuff. So put a label on your line, put a label on your plane, label some points that you have on there. And identify if you have any collinear or coplanar points. So if you have any points that are all on the same plane or any points that are all on the same line. That part you don't have to do. You do not have to take a picture and upload it to Google Classroom. I think that's something that Mr. Bechtel is going to try. So take a minute, draw a picture with at least 1 point, 1 line, 1 plane, label it, see if there's anything that's collinear or coplanar in your drawing. And while you're doing it, I'm just going to make a sketch up here. You can use whatever letters you want. And for fun, we'll just draw something that's not on this plane. I'll draw another line over here. And we'll call it T. Okay, so hopefully you've kind of drawn something, or you're still drawing something. You want to make sure it's labeled, things like that. Looks like I didn't label my plane, so I could label it using a capital script letter. I could also just leave it, because I could use 3 of these points and do it as well. So I could call it plane, or if I'm naming it, I have to choose 3 points that are not all on the same line. So I just pick 3 of them that are not on the same line. So I could do, looks like I could do A, B, and C. They're not all in the line, right? They would make a triangle if I sort of connected them all. I could do A, C, M. Let's do that one. A, C, M. Okay. So this is something that's a little different. If you have 2 lines that cross each other, sometimes you'll notice that they don't actually make a dot there to represent that point. And that's just to show that this is the exact location where these cross. It's just being a little more specific. When 2 lines cross, it makes a smaller location than if you were to draw a big dot there. So this is a point, it just doesn't have a dot. And it is labeled, so you'll see that a lot. We have some collinear points, so collinear points. All right, we could say like BCA, or BC and M rather, sorry, not A. BC and M, they're all on this line right here. Or we could have even done like A, C, and R are all collinear. We have coplanar points, right? All of these points on this thing are coplanar. So A, B, C, R, and M, those are all coplanar. They're all on that one plane. The only thing that's not on this plane is I have this line that's not there. We could even say that these 2 lines are coplanar because they both appear to be on that same plane, right? All right, I'm going to clear my drawings and move on. All right, so moving beyond the 3 building block terms, our 3 undefined terms, we have kind of a family of shapes that are all related to lines. So the first one is called a segment. A segment is just a piece of a line. A line segment is part of a line consisting of 2 points and all the points in between them. So notice, this is a definition. I'm using the word line in it because we've sort of agreed on what a line is. It's part of a line consisting of 2 points, right? We defined what a point was already. The only thing in here is this word here, between. Between is an important word. We technically don't have a definition of it here, but it's kind of a common notion. It's between, directly in a line between. It's kind of an undefined term as well. We'll talk about it a little bit tomorrow. Anyway, for a line segment, we name it with the 2 endpoints, in this case A and B. Doesn't matter the order, just like a line. It doesn't have any direction, so it doesn't matter which way we name it. And then we just draw a little segment on top of it. Just a little line, no arrows. We don't want to use arrows because that would indicate something different. That would indicate it's a line instead of just a segment. The next one we have is endpoint. I was using this term already, but an endpoint is a point at one end of a segment, or it could be the starting point of a ray, which is the next word we're going to talk about. Endpoints are just the ends of segments. Then we have a ray. A ray is another part of a line. It has a starting point, and then it goes only in one direction forever. It doesn't go both ways, only goes one way. And it doesn't matter which way. It could go to the right, it could go to the left, it could go up, go down, down to the right, up to the left, whatever. It doesn't really matter about the direction. For array, because it sort of has a direction, it has a starting point and then it's going one direction, we actually do care about the way we name it. So notice that both of these rays would have the name RS because they have a starting point that's R. And then as we go the direction of the ray, the next point we touch is an S. So we need to start with R and then S. It doesn't matter if the ray is going to the right or going to the left. It matters from the starting point, that has to go first, and then what's the next point. And that's how we name it. Doesn't matter which direction it's facing, up or down. Just because it's going to the left, we don't switch the order of the letters. The order of the letters are based on sort of the direction of our ray. We start at R and then we go through S. That one's a weird one. That's one that trips people up a lot because most of the time we don't really care the order for lines or line segments, but for rays we do. Last one in this family is something that's called opposite rays. So opposite rays are two rays that have a common endpoint, a common starting point, but then they go in completely opposite directions. So in this case, they both share E, but one of them is going to the right through G, and one of them is going to be going to the left. So you can see, man, I don't love that. It keeps coming up there. One of them is named EF, starting at E and going to the left through F, and one of them is EG, starting at E, going through G, going the other way. They're exactly opposite directions. Opposite rays help us define angles a little bit. So the reason we're talking about opposite rays rather than just being a line is because, well, we're going to use that idea when we talk about angles. All right. Let's go ahead. This will probably be the last thing we do here. Let's name some things that are on there on this picture real quick. So let me just annotate it. We have any number of points that we could pick up, right? We could pick any number of points that are on there. Doesn't really matter. We just choose one. Let's say O. A plane, well, we have a plane that's clearly drawn there. We could call it plane P using that script letter right over here. A line, again, we could choose any line we want. We could name it using 2 points, whatever. I'm going to choose XL. That's one of our lines. That's this one right here, the one that has X and L on it. A segment. Now, there's not any only segments here, but a segment can just be part of the line. So I could pick any segment I wanted. I could pick FL and just think about that idea, which I'll do for this one. FL just goes from F to L, stops. We're only talking about that little piece of it right there. I could do FM, ML, LX, right? There's a lot of different segments I could do. Same with array. Even though these are both lines, I could talk about array. So I could maybe say M, starting here at M and going this way. So I could talk about this as being ray ML, starting here and then going that direction forever. I could, basically I just need to pick a starting point and then one direction on my line. It might be harder to name some of them, right? I don't know that I'd have a name ready if I wanted to start at L and go this way up. I could maybe give myself another point if I wanted to, and I could call it LZ. Let's do that. Let's do LZ. I just created my own. So it starts at L, goes through Z, keeps going that way. That's array. Again, lots of different answers we could put down here. We'll just stop at that. All right, we have 1 minute left, so I'm going to clear my drawings. We'll stop that right there, but I do want to bring your attention to the first homework assignment. We'll be picking up here tomorrow, but there is a first homework assignment. I have posted it in the Google Classroom too. Yeah, LX would count as array. As long as I just wanted to talk about starting at L, going through X, and doing that, I could count that as array, absolutely. So the first homework, again, you can find the textbook PDF on the Google Classroom classwork page. These are the problems I want you to do. The one you're going to turn in for credit is problem 38. So you're going to want to do that one. Take a picture of it using your phone or the computer, webcam, whatever, and attach it to that assignment. That's the one I'm going to be grading and giving you feedback on and giving you credit for this homework assignment. But please make sure you've tried as many of the problems as you can. Try to do them all. That's kind of the point here. It's 101, so we're already late to get out of here. If you have any questions for me, you can stay around and ask them. I'm going to stop the recording. Otherwise, you're also free to go.